Continuing production of The Open Mind has been made possible by grants from Ann Olnick, Joan Gans Cooney, the Engelson Family Foundation, Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Joanne and Kenneth Wellner Foundation, and from the corporate community, Mutual of America.
I'm Alexander Heffner, your host on The Open Mind. In a move universally derided in world capitals, President Trump veered the United States in the direction of xenophobia, nativism, isolation with his decision to withdraw from the Paris Accord. But in doing so, the Trump administration appealed to his hardline, Breitbart-reading base and also doubled down on its rhetoric of populism, a disdain for cosmopolitanism, vouching for Pittsburgh and not Paris, even as his billionaire cabinet rules the day. It's this paradox of populism, in fact grounded in a crude exploitation of the worker, a cult-like emotional connection that ignores the reality of policies and their consequences for America, that's so concerning today. That's why I invited here the mayor of Rust, John Fetterman of Braddock, Pennsylvania, on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, an edgy and brave new thinker whose service has inspired revival in the heartland. Facing off against the establishment Democratic candidates in 2016, Fetterman unsuccessfully sought the Senate nomination in a three-person competitive race. Donald Trump has mined the dark side of populism, and Bernie Sanders has mined the aspirational side. But it's that's the common thread Fetterman reflected last year, and I welcome the mayor today.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for being here. It is that paradox of populism today,
Sure,
that the most visible embodiment of it is denying people a living wage.
Sure, yeah. Cruelty is the new black in a lot of conservative circles, and the Ossoff race in Atlanta area, the GOP candidate was quoted saying, I don't believe in a living wage. And it's staggering in its nonchalance, basically. And from my perspective, the message that I tried in my election is that we're all better off when we're all better off. And you can't, when I would ask folks, can you raise a family, support yourself on $9 an hour? I've never had anyone raise their hand. And I don't know why that's a controversial or leftist kind of concept. This idea that if you work hard and work 40 hours a week, that you should be able to take care of yourself and yours.
I think so too. And the first thing I wanted to mention in our discussion is just the chickens coming home to roost. And boy, do they have avian influenza here in
Sure.
Kansas. The reality being austerity, a scorched earth torching of the public education system, is an example of, as you say, an aw shucks nonchalance. Tax cuts are going to raise the standard of living, are going to improve people's lives. And in Kansas, what's the matter with Kansas? Well, they're bankrupt and they're bankrupting their children. And to me, that's a great starting point for you as a mayor or for a new populist wave to take shape. I don't know if you see it that way.
Well, I mean, and it's interesting how Kansas is reversing those. They overrode his veto. And this idea that you can tax cut for the rich your way to prosperity has been disproven over and over again. And it's the Lucy and the football, and Charlie Brown. They keep bringing it back, hoping that it's going to work this time. And time again, it's proven that it doesn't work. And I return back to that axiom of we're all better off when we're all better off. And it's like we're not we're still paying for it as a society. If we shortchange our children, if we don't have universal pre-K, if we pay $8, $9 an hour, you're going to pay, for food stamps. You're going to pay more in housing. You're going to pay more in correctional costs down the road. There's no cheap way to run, this government. And the way that is the most inclusive, the way that creates the greatest benefit, has been proven to show that, again, we're all better off when we're all made better off.
Right. And you were describing for our viewers, the background here is that a two-term governor decided to tax cut his way to prosperity, except it was to depression, and the Republican legislature has now
it was so bad. They actually voted to override that, and that's a staggering statement, and it comes as a surprise to nobody because they were constantly warned throughout his tenure that this isn't working, the deficits are increasing. It just they had plenty of time to avert that iceberg, but that's where they're at, and it's another lesson that I hope will be embraced on the right, but I don't have a lot of confidence that ultimately it will.
Well, when you take, if you do, and I'm sure you fly out of Pittsburgh sometimes, but when you take that regional Amtrak from Penn Station to Pittsburgh, and you basically go from Philly through the state, and you see the blue-collar voter, you see the everyday American in any variety of professions, not necessarily minors. These are workers of all colors and creeds. When you take that ride now, what are you thinking about?
I'm just thinking about how that we in Pennsylvania are at a real critical tipping point in our state. We went red for the first time since 1988. And we went red because a lot of long-term Democratic voters finally, in areas outside of my community in Western Pennsylvania, said, hey, why not give this guy a try? I was actually at his rally in Western Pennsylvania in a small steel town called Monessen almost a year ago to the day. And here is Donald Trump in a depressed steel town struggling for its very survival, and they're cheering for a billionaire, that purchases Chinese steel, that stiffs his contractors. And it struck me I said, either he's lost it or he, has figured something out that we don't fully yet realize. And I look at that as the turning point in the 2016 election where, I don't know if it was analytics or just instinct, but they were able to carve a path by bringing in disaffected Democrats that have watched their way of life and their community and their social welfare just erode over the last 30 or 40 years. And they decided to take a chance on somebody like Donald Trump.
It doesn't seem to me, not to be too hopeless, that there is any accountability from those voters who see the appointment, as I said in the intro, of a billionaire cabinet and policies that ostensibly are not going to be beneficial. So what's the way forward?
The way forward for the Democrats, in my own humble estimation, is,
and for Americans.
Well, I mean,
right?
I don't think anything's going to change much in the 2018 election. And when I was campaigning as a surrogate for Hillary Clinton and also Katie McGinty, I was just warning people, like, look, you can't let this happen because they're gonna run the table if you let Donald Trump sneak in. And you already have a Supreme Court justice appointed, and you're probably going to have one more. And that alone will shape a conservative agenda throughout America for the next 30 years. We as Democrats have to focus on getting 2020, and we have to heal the rift, I believe, that exists strongly between Clinton and Sanders camp, and also a new emerging rift where do we make a sustained outreach to disaffected Democrats and Trump voters, or do we just say, that's treason, it's unforgivable, we're going to write you off, we're going to find a new path? And I'm for the former, of course. And until we do, we run the risk of becoming disorganized and kind of going after our own and the purity tests that could conceivably give him 4 more years.
Why do you have such seemingly little faith in 2018?
I just get the sense that of course, there could be some Russian bombshell or some kind of thing of that nature, but people are clamoring on the left for impeachment. It's like, well, then that just gets Mike Pence, okay? And Mike Pence is the, conservative, organized. I mean, like, in fact, in some ways, he's, the GOP's ideal standard bearer. So this notion that we can, take everything back in 2018, if Trump is impeached or what have you, I think is just flat out wrong.
But what is your experience in Braddock? How does that inform the way you appeal to not the dark side of populism, but the better angels of populism,
Sure.
the humanitarian potential of populism?
Well, I've always tried to live in an authentic manner, and you take whatever topic it is, say living wage. It's like I got my start teaching, helping young people get their GEDs, and I know firsthand what a job making $15 an hour can do for a family. And when you actually talk to people one-on-one and say, do you really think it's fair to pay somebody $8.50 an hour that works 40 hours and they still live in poverty? And they'll admit it. There's too much tribalism when it comes to that. Same with immigration. My wife was a dreamer. She came from Brazil, and this idea that we're going to, she has made this world such a better place. And when they meet her, it's, I didn't mean, really, that's what immigrants are really like. So this, demonstrating that, we're living through an authentic, this is our lives. My wife is a dreamer. We live in one of the poorest communities in the state, and we want to move the community and the region forward in a way that is conducive to everyone's welfare, not this idea that we're going to be able to tax cut our way, to the 1%.
How did you find that message in the neighborhoods surrounding Braddock and across Pennsylvania? How did you find it to resonate or not resonate in what was a very polarized moment?
Sure, it was incredibly polarizing, and I would, I was a surrogate, and I would go to these events, and I would talk to union presidents, and they were sweating it. They were like, we're fully behind Secretary Clinton, but it's like, 2/3 of our people are voting for Donald Trump, and it was an extraordinary moment that happened in American politics. They found a way where nobody thought that there was a path. And we as Democrats have to get that back. We have to do a better job. And I hate to say this, but in some cases, I would never consider voting for Donald Trump, and I find a lot of his policies abhorrent. But we have let vast swaths of Pennsylvania and Ohio down, and they're desperate. And
right.
we helped foment the level of desperation and economic insecurity. We've played a role in that. So, we have to take some ownership in that as well, too. And from a moral and social justice standpoint, we have to invest in these kind of places. And that's consistently been my message. It's not about Braddock. It's not about me. It's about, this whole roster of communities in my state and in Ohio that need this kind of reinvestment, that need this kind of attention. And without it, what's it going to look like 10 years from now, 15 years, 20 years from now? And I see people disparaging or making light of the coal industry, and it's like, coal isn't a growth industry. I mean, I understand that, but it helped build the United States. It still powers a lot of our electrical grid, and we have to understand these communities, that's all they have. And if you say, well, Arby's has more employees than the coal industry, like was reported in the Washington Post, like Democrats gleefully proclaiming that coal's demise isn't a way to win back, middle America that way. It's we want to reinvest in you. We want to make sure your communities are better off. We understand that we have to do better for you instead of just proclaiming that you guys are over, and it's like, good luck with that.
The infusion, or the so-called infusion of coal and related energy jobs, that's been grossly exaggerated. The extent to which Trump's election has fostered a new wave of economic revival. Mm-hmm. And I'm not purporting to know or suggest, Mayor, that green jobs are the answer in these communities. But
well, they're not necessarily. They're not the answer. The answer is we want to reinvest in these places. We want to make sure these folks have basic resources. Otherwise, you've seen the unraveling that occurs. Whether it's the opioid crisis, whether it's my community lost 90% of its population. These are significant and staggering. Social problems that are occurring all across, Western Pennsylvania and throughout Ohio. And up until 2016, a lot of these, it wasn't brought front and center. And Trump's ascension has brought a lot of this idea that it's like, wow, what did we miss here? And why did these good people decide to vote for a guy that goes home and uses a solid gold toilet that pretends to be for the working families?
Right. When is enough for small town America to recognize that, yes, the Democrats have just as much failed them in many instances, including President Obama used the word security, economic security. Yep. The question of that is really that was not secured. Economic stability in the wake of the recession might have been secured through the Obama presidency, but the Obama presidency did not radically alter the socioeconomic landscape enough for people to feel like they were now part of the equation. So my question is, looking to 2018 and 2020, if there is no major revival or refurbished airports, infrastructure, roads, won't there be a recognition that this was just all a hoax?
You mean
Donald Trump's, when he would say we're broken, and in many instances was right about infrastructure, if folks in Braddock and across suburban and rural Pennsylvania see it's same old, it's not touching me, won't there be a recognition that this was just
and a rejection of Trump?
Is that plausible?
I don't necessarily see that. After he withdrew from Paris, there was wholesale outrage on the left, and my position was, this wasn't like from a tortured, fevered brow he came. It's just like this was politics. This was 2020. This is, Ohio and Pennsylvania, I consider are the boardwalk and park place of American politics. You can win Monopoly without those two, but it's a heck of a lot harder. And no one predicts Ohio's coming back. So Pennsylvania is an incredibly important state, and it's no accident that a lot of the things that he's doing and saying play well to his base. And this idea that that he wants to be a consensus. Trump didn't run to the center; he ran to his base. And there aren't Democrats now that are thinking, I didn't vote for him in 2016, but I want to give him a try. He's only getting more and more attractive to his base and less attractive to the people that already voted for other candidates. So,
or might not have voted at all.
Or might not have voted at all.
Yeah.
So whether Trump has a path or not to 2020, nobody knows. That's a lifetime away. But if he does have a path, it's going to run through Ohio and Pennsylvania for sure. And he's going to do everything he can to preserve that. And the people in those communities that voted for him, I think, at least thus far, we're only 5 months into it, thus far are not shaken of their support and belief that there was a sign in Trump country that we pass all the time saying, 2017, Donald Trump kicking ASS, not kissing. And there's that sense that there's still a lot of yard signs, there's still a lot of support. And theoretically anything's possible, but his constituency in Western Pennsylvania is not up in arms right now saying, oh my God, what have we done? It's, you go get him,
And that is partly the choreography of the DC swamp.
Yeah. It's all professional wrestling.
Right. When I asked you before, what's the way forward, to what extent was this racialized? To what extent was it cultural? And to what extent does it matter if you create a local airport or improve a road or bridge, or if people aren't going to respond to that, they're going to stay in their shells?
Sure. Well, I think the way forward is we do need to invest in our infrastructure, but we need structural things to happen in our economy, like a living wage, for example, and that we're going to reinvest in these aging and distressed communities like my own, like Youngstown, like all these other places.
Have you seen signs of that happening since Trump's election?
I haven't, and his budget talks about cutting back the community development block grants, which is the lifeblood of communities like mine, where private dollars will only follow public dollars. So he hasn't taken any concrete steps, with the exception of killing the TPP, to warrant any kind of enthusiasm or, wow, this guy really is going to be looking out for us. And not that I ever expected that, but I think moving forward, it's going to come down to a lot of show, like I'm going to pretend I saved 1,000 jobs at Carrier. I mean, read Drudge Report every day, and that's what his supporters are thinking, because that's where most of those supporters, get their source. Know what the Democrats think. We're in a HuffPost Drudge world, and we don't get out of our silos, and that's a criticism as the left as much as it is of the right. And if you're, barely getting by and you're having trouble at home, and your kids aren't doing well at school, you don't sit down at your kitchen table and evaluate, infrastructure versus, how much does racial resentment play into it? It's just this visceral reaction you get watching the news, going online, and it's hard to quantify. And it's always played a role in Republican politics, but in this particular case, something really unique happened, and we as Democrats have to understand that, and we can never let it happen again. And if we do, we only ultimately have ourselves to blame for it.
You've been mayor since 2006. You were recently reelected. What is your vision in this environment where mayors and county executives really have to take charge with an austerity budget that may replicate the Kansas experience on a national scale? Sure.
Well, our way forward has always been what it always has been, is that we are building ourselves back from the brink. And 12 years into this, we have some momentum. But if you drove through Braddock, this afternoon, you would still see a community steeped in still a lot of issues. And it certainly will need to go on long after I'm gone to do that. And there are so many communities like that in my state. And that's a big reason why I ran. And if we don't get serious about reinvesting in our communities and our infrastructure, and making sure that if you are working, you can support your family in a dignified manner, if we don't invest in education, early childhood education, healthcare, these kind of things, the fabric's going to continue to tear, and Pennsylvania is going to continue to accrue this growing roster of communities that are in trouble.
What has improved since '06, and what work remains?
Well, most every metric's improved in my community in 2006, and we're waiting now to hear if we got a medical marijuana growing facility in our community, and that would be a real game changer. Medical marijuana has only recently gone legal in our state, so we put in an application for that. That would be significant. We were coming back from not even having a restaurant in our community to now we will have 3 before the summer is out, open. So we're building back from a very fundamental level of near extinction, and you have other communities falling behind. So Trump would have his work cut out for him in Western Pennsylvania or in Ohio if he were earnest about that. And speaking as someone who's been on that ground now in there for 16 years, it's going to take more than speeches. It's going to take more than empty symbolism. It's going to take sustained decades of work, and I don't see it coming. And hopefully we Democrats can understand that we can never let this happen again, and we need to claim those places, because that's what Democrats do. We care about and we take care of places like Braddock, places like Monessen, places like Sharon, Pennsylvania, that have truly been left out of the economic equation.
During the 2016 cycle, your governor was missing in action. I couldn't find him. I didn't see him out there or aware of the seriousness of the political problem. This is a Democrat of Governor Wolf, right? Who, like Kate McGinty, who ran for the Senate and lost, made out of establishment cloth. from a fiduciary treasury background. Are they doing anything to help you?
Governor Wolf, I'm a big fan of Governor Wolf,
Yeah.
and I tell people right now that ask me, what can I do for 2018? What can I do? Is you should do everything you can to get Governor Wolf and Senator Casey elected. Because if Governor Wolf loses, we in Pennsylvania have an exact replica of what the federal government looks like now. A Republican chief executive, both houses, and they can run the table on all kinds of things from women's choice to environmental regulations. So, and so that goes with Senator Casey. So, we have to hold the line in 2018, I think, in Pennsylvania, and for 2020, do everything we can to turn Pennsylvania blue again. And I'm optimistic, but only if we incorporate the lessons that we should have learned from 2016, and we select a candidate, whoever it may be, that understands that we need to cull the best from the Sanders populism, but also from the we have to win too, and combine them into.
And there's the argument that Sanders would have won. I mean, that he got a bad rap, and because of his provincial appeal as a curmudgeonly New Englander.
Well, I mean, his authenticity
could have
won
the day.
He had authenticity for sure. But I bristle just a little bit because Secretary Clinton pulled ahead an insurmountable lead, largely based on the strength of African American vote in the southern states during the primary as well too. And
then it didn't come out in the general.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, didn't at the same level for Barack Obama. But I don't want to relitigate the election. All I know is that moving forward, we need to have an inspiring level of populism. And really, I don't see that happening in the way it should until, we get Citizens United out of the picture.
Right. Well, Mayor, we really appreciate your time. I don't want to relitigate the past so much as to recognize that in the one primary contest to date in New Jersey, of course, you had these special congressional elections. It doesn't look like the Democrats did learn their lesson.
Nope. And I would just like to see our party really come together and learn its lessons. And I don't see that happening, and I see an overemphasis placed on these niche races in Montana and if John Ossoff wins, and I sure hope he does, it's not going to change anything. If he loses, doesn't say anything either. It just says that they have spent unhealthy sums of money on a race that's the most expensive in congressional history, after participating, as I did, in the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history. And money. And unlimited money seems to be what everybody acknowledges is the key to winning elections, and it's not. It's ideas, and I think it's authenticity, and we need to return to those roots.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And thanks to you in the audience. I hope you join us again next time for a thoughtful excursion into the world of ideas. Yes, ideas. And until then, keep an open mind. Please visit the Open Mind website at 13.org/openmind to view this program online or to access over 1,500 other interviews. And do check us out on Twitter and Facebook at Open Mind TV for updates on future programming.
Continuing production of The Open Mind has been made possible by grants from Ann Olnick, Joan Gans Cooney, the Engelson Family Foundation, Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Joanne and Kenneth Wellner Foundation, with special thanks to the Schumann Media Center for additional support, and to the corporate community Mutual of America.